All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Parashat Korach, and because we're starting a little bit late, I'm going to dispense with the festivities of music and all of this kind of stuff. We're going to get right down to business. So we're going to be reading Parashat Korach. I've already shared the screen correctly. And here we go. Basically, it's Numbers, let me get the exact verses here. It is Numbers 16 through 18. And we have a rebellion. Shocking that the Jews might rebel. Actually, sometimes it is shocking that they would rebel. They certainly do seem to accept a lot, especially from the overlords in the current secular state of Israel. Okay, so here we go. We're going to be reading in the Hebrew. Follow along in Hebrew if you can, along with another language if you need to, or just alone in that other language. Okay, so here we go. Vayikach Korach ben Ishar ben Kahat ben Lewi Dotan Aviram bnei Eliav On ben Pelet bnei Reuven. Okay, so we see this is a rebellion. This is an internal rebellion within the tribe of Levi, right? So this is a Kahati. This is from the tribe of Kahat. Okay. I should say from the clan of Kahat. ويقوموا לפני משה ואנשים מבני ישראל 52 נשיאי עדה קראי מועד אנשי שם. Well, here we have an interesting phrase, okay? Well, they rose up against Moshe. And 250 of them. Here we have an interesting biblical Hebrew grammatical phenomenon. So if I were to translate this directly, this verse right here, word for word, it would say they rose up before Moshe and the people from the children of Israel, 250 princes of the congregation. Those who are Karaite would be those who are called for the Moed, or maybe the callers of the Moed. We'll look at that in a second. Men of renown, men of name. Okay, so it sounds like they rose up against Moshe and against these 250 men. If I were to read it, word for word, but that's not what happened. So they, meaning Korach and Dotan and Aviran, and On ben Pelet, all of these people and 250 men rose up before Moshe, because we have here that the Lifnei Moshe, okay, that the Yakumu Lifnei Moshe, they rose up before Moshe. So we have the phrase before Moshe that is in the middle, that is interceding between Wayakumu and Anashim Ibnei Yisrael. So you wouldn't find that in English. In English, you would say Wayakumu, Hem Yakumu Hem Anashim Ibnei Yisrael Hamishim Matain Nisei Aida. You would have the subjects together, not separated by the verse before Moshe. Here you have two subjects, they, meaning the people we mentioned by name before, and the 250 men of the children of Israel, separated by the phrase Lifnei Moshe, separated by the phrase before Moshe. It just goes to show, and this creates a lot of misunderstandings in the Torah, especially among the rabbis, quite frankly, that that it doesn't work the same way in biblical Hebrew, that you can have two phrases which are meant to be really together, logically, separated sometimes by entire sentences, in some cases even by a paragraph or so, that qualifies or that explains the subjects or the objects or whatever the case may be of that sentence. Okay, at any rate, let's go on. I can get rid of this. Goodbye. Okay. We are in, we wanted to look up Kiri'e Eba. So let's first look at how the NIV translates this. What does that even mean? Those who are called by the congregation, I'm sorry, Kiri'e Muadim, Kiri'e Mu'ed. Those who are called by the appointed times, what does that even mean, right? So here the NIV translates it as who have been appointed members of the council. Oh, that's an interesting translation. Let's see what Robert Alter does with this. So this is number 16.2. Number 16.2, and 250 men of Israel, community chieftains. Here we go. Persons called up to meeting. So that's how Robert Alter deals with it. Let's see how Everett Fox deals with it. So Everett Fox says, those called in the appointed council, men of name. That's an interesting translation. And Robert Alter doesn't give any explanation. So persons called up to meeting. So let's look at this Kiri'e, or Kiri'e Mu'ed, okay? So Mu'ed it's usually translated as an appointed time, right? We have the Mu'adim, that's usually translated as appointed times. What it really means is the meeting. It's kind of the meeting between Israel and God. We also have the Oel Mu'ed, right? That's the place where Moshe or the Israelites, one could say by extension, meet with God. So a Mu'ed is really a meeting, right? Let's see. So here Strong's does appointed time, place, or meeting. BDB does appointed time, place, or meeting. Often Strong's just copies BDB. So right, so it's an appointed time, place, right? Appointed time or place, a Mu'ed. Okay, comes from, I believe, the underlying root Ya'ad. At least that's what the BDB points out. Here, I don't know, it's BDB that points it out, but it is pointed out from Ya'ad. Okay. And we've looked at this etymology before. So Ya'ad is to appoint, right? In modern Hebrew, Ya'ad is a goal, right? Something that you appoint for yourself to, destination that you appoint for yourself, or Ya'ad is a destination, actually. Maybe even better translation. Or okay, so Kiri'e Mu'ed, so those who are called to meeting, right? So that's why two of these three translations speak about a council, okay? And then it was Everett Fox, he says council, and the NIV says council, and then it was Robert Alter who says called up to meeting. Okay, so that also, I guess, would imply a council. So that's the way most of the translations seem to be dealing with this phrase. Shabbat Shalom, Rick April Scurry. So that's that. At any rate, they're important members, right? Nisi'e, usually translated as princes. Okay, here the BDB translates it as leaders. Not the BDB, I'm sorry. The NIV translates it as leaders, right? Or community leaders. Nisi'e Aida. So, and by the way, Aida, I think, is also, at least BDB claims, or I don't know, it's directly the BDB, it's claimed here. Whoa, that also comes from Ya'ad. Let's make sure. Aida. So Hebrew aid. So they're taking it back to aid, which is witness. Okay. All right. Okay. So Aida, but I could have sworn I saw someone linked it back to Ya'ad. Maybe that was just Mu'aid, Aida. No, it wouldn't make sense. Right. So witness. So actually, I think I put in my little spreadsheet here. If I didn't, let me do it right now. Translations, do I have Aida? Shkan, Aida, congregation, witness and community, right? Could come from either the root. So this is what I wrote for the word Aida, which I'm translating. These are my own translations. So, which I think are better than standard translations. Or at least I'm trying to make them better than standard translations. So this is what the comment I have could come from either the root Aid or Ya'ad. Requires further investigation for this translation. We've assumed the former, that it comes from Aid, right? So Aida, I'm translating as witnessing community. Okay, back we go. So, anywho, these are important people, right? Verse 3. وَيِقْهَلُوا عَلْ مُوشَى وَعَلْ أَهْرَوْن وَيَمْرُوا عَلَيْهِمْ رَب لَכם כל העדה כולם קדושים בתוכם יהוה מדוע תתנשאו על קהל יהוה, right? So this phrase Rav Lechem appears a number of times in the Tanakh. I wonder if I could find the other places. I could do a search on Safaria. Let's give it a whack. A whirl. Deuteronomy 1:6. דבר אלינו בחורף לאמור Rav Lechem Shabbath. Okay, so here we have in the context of, well, let's just choose one. So Rav Lechem means, too much for you. Rav is a lot, right? And Lechem is to you. This is our verse right here. So we see this phrase appears a bunch of times. Let's just pick one. 1 Kings. Hakham Melech v'as. Oh, this is a good one. So this is 1 Kings 12:28. Actually, I'll grab it over here. Close this off. 1 Kings 12:28. And so this is the story of Rehoboam and Yeroboam. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. And he makes a couple of silly mistakes, which we won't go, childish mistakes, because he took advice from the Na'arim, from the youths, his childhood friends. And so this is, where do we say, in what verse is it exactly? 28. Whoops. So I'll just read the English to make it go quicker. Okay, so after seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. This is Yerovam. Well, we'll start here. Yerovam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of Yahweh in Jerusalem, they will begin to give their allegiance to their lord Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. My God, right? Horrible. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. And there's our phrase, we'll check it out in Hebrew in a second. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Okay, exactly the same thing that Aaron said to the congregation when he built the golden calf, or when the golden calf just magically materializes. He kind of puts it to God, to Moshe actually. And in Exodus, I think it's 17 is the golden calf, if I'm not mistaken. And one he set up in Bethel. Okay, we've spoken about Bethel a lot. Bethel is the place where Yaakov had his dream, and it's also one of the places that Yaakov stopped on his way back into the land, and also built an altar there. Bethel is actually has great significance, at least in the history of the early patriarchs, and really is kind of like, one could say, the holy place in the land. Right? This is a very holy place. So this is really symbolic to set it up at Bethel, where Yaakov had his dream, and where Yaakov reaffirmed God reaffirmed his covenant to Yaakov when Yaakov was coming back into the land after he was returning from Lavan in I almost said Armenia, no, in Aram, right, in Padan Aram. So at any rate, in the other in Dan. Dan also has significance, but not as much as Betel. This thing became a sin. The people came to worship at the one at Betel and went as far as Dan to worship the other. So the phrase that we were looking for. So they set up alternate places of worship to Yahweh, right? So kind of like the Samaritans. I love the Samaritans. They're awesome. They're amazing. They keep the Torah in a very nice way, in a way that's much closer to the original. But boy, they have this Karaism, and I think it was, I can't remember now exactly who it was. One of the Hashmonean kings, I believe, destroyed the altar. The Samaritans were already around in the time, at least of the later Hashmoneans. Maybe it was in the Herodian era. I'd have to look it up again. That they went and destroyed the altar of the Samaritans up in Har Gerizim, because it was not considered the correct place of worship. Well, yeah, it's not the correct place of worship. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so sorry, love the Samaritans. I'm friends with a number of Samaritans, but that's the fact of the matter, in my opinion, anyway. Okay, Aron Yomru Rav Lechem. So we'll come back here, right? It is too much for you. You've gone too far. Okay, so this is what Korach and his congregation say to Moshe and Aaron, right? So we're all holy. Kulam kedoshim b'tocham Yahweh u'madua titnasu al kahal Yahweh. We're all holy, okay? And God, Yahweh, is among all of us. Why are you raising yourselves up among, above the congregation of Yahweh, right? So this is kind of a typical populist argument, okay? This is kind of a liberal argument, to use the, a neoliberal argument. This is kind of a democratic argument to go into, American politics, right? This is exactly what the Democrats kind of want to do. They want to appeal to the populist sentiment of, there are those who are privileged and those who are not privileged, and why are some privileged and some not privileged, and everything has to be equal, and right. And this is exactly the kind of sentiment that Korach is appealing to, which is a very appealing sentiment, which is why the Democrats, despite the complete bankruptcy of their policies, keep on getting people into office, and even so-called presidents. At any rate, so this is the populist argument, right? The appeal to populism, right? Who are these people? They think they're better than you, right? They're the elitists. They're the privileged ones, and you are the downtrodden. Okay, but we're all holy, right? And they even use some very seemingly logical but very sneaky arguments, right? God is among all of us, right? But of course, Moshe, first of all, never wanted this gig, right? From day one, he never wanted it. It was thrust upon him by God, and we know how humble Moshe is, as will be pointed out very quickly. Okay, so here we are in verse 4. Wa'ishma Moshe wa'ipol al panav. So Moshe heard this and fell upon his face. Wa'idaber el Korach wa'el kol a'dato lemor boker wi'yadoa Yahweh et asher lo ואת קודש ואת הקדוש והקריב אליו. Okay. ואת הקדוש והקריב אליו ואת אשר יבחר בו יקריב אליו. So Moshe says, okay, in the morning we're gonna do a little test. Again, I'm not gonna translate here. My friend says his girlfriend and he agreed that Korach is definitely a Democrat. Maybe Korach. I think Korach is Chuck Schumer, and I don't know if Chuck Schumer is a Levite, but if he is, then maybe we'll have to ask the rabbis, the Kabbalists. But it's very possible that Chuck Schumer is the reincarnation of Korach. Okay, so follow along in the English because I don't want to translate every pasuk because we just don't have the time. Okay, but basically in the morning we're gonna do a little test. Okay. Do a little litmus test and see how that works out for you guys. Okay, Zot asu kahu lechem Mahtot. Korach v'kol da'ato. Okay, well, wow, this is interesting, right? Because this kind of actually harkens back to let's see, it's going to be Numbers 10, if I'm not Numbers, Leviticus 10, if I'm not mistaken. Where are we? Leviticus 10. Yes, with Nadav and Avihu, right? They were the first and second born sons of Aaron, and they took their censers, right? They took their mahtot, right? It's the same word exactly, okay? Mahtot, if we look it up in the Hebrew. Let's do that, in fact. Okay. Their mahtato, okay? So these are their fire pans or their censers. It's basically like if I don't know if there's a closest analogy today might be if you see pictures of a Catholic church where they have those little things that they walk around that swing back and forth with the incense burning in it, right? That would basically be a mahtat, okay? So same thing here. So it's just an interesting, can we call it coincidence or connection, right? That in the case of Nadav and Avihu who were basically rebelling against God, right? They thought they were doing more, but they were doing less. In fact, I always use Nadav and Avihu as a classic case of lot tosifu v'lo tigra'u, right? I did a video many years ago. I won't look it up now, but you can find it's on my channel, right? About adding and taking away from the Torah, right? So we always think taking away from the Torah is bad, okay? And the rabbis, I used the example there in that video of the rabbis, they take away plenty from the Torah, right? For instance, Shemitah would be a classic example where they do their, baloney, workarounds, the baloney workaround. What's the word I'm looking for? Loopholes for Shemitah with the heter mechira, and what's the other one called? I forgot the other one now. One Karaite do. It doesn't matter. At any rate, the and the whatever. Okay, so right, so they take away from the Torah in a sense, but what the rabbis also do is add to the Torah, and they think they're being extra pious by adding to the Torah, right? So wash your hands before you eat a meal and say the blessing. You have to pray 3 times or whatever. All of the extra laws that they added to the Torah, and they think they're being more pious. They're being more religious. They're being closer to God, but no, they're not, because lo tosifu v'lo tigra'u. It's in the same sentence. Adding is just as bad as taking away. But it's a very easy mistake to make by thinking you're going to be more pious. You're going to do more laws. That you are now going to win even more favor of God. But no, that's not, in my opinion. Whenever I quote God or say God's opinion, I always say, in my opinion, that is not what Yahweh wants, right? He wants us to do what he says, not more and not less, okay? So this is the mistake that Nadav and Avihu did. They're just like the rabbis, okay? They didn't tigra'u, they didn't ligroa, they were lohosif, osifu, right? They added onto the Torah, they took the censers, and they brought fire that was not called for, right? They brought incense that was not called for, and they took it into God, and the fire came down and burnt them, right? So this is a classic case. It's a classic mistake that one make. I'm going to be so pious. I'm going to be so religious. I'm going to get closer to God. I'm going to show him that I'm really, really, I'm super, super religious, right? Like the Haredim, even like the rabbis, like the Pharisees. And no, this is as my friend in Morocco used to like to say, this is the big mistake. Okay, so this is the big mistake. Adding is no better than taking away. We follow God. We don't add, we don't take away. He's the boss. We do what he wants. Okay. So this all being said, Shabbat Shalom, Roberta Yomans. So this all being said, this is exactly what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. I was saying that, so Nadav and Avihu, okay, so unwinding a little bit, unwinding some of the nested loops we've gotten into. So Nadav and Avihu, right, they also brought this unwanted, they brought unwanted fire. Again, the connection here, or the coincidence, or the connection you could say, is in both cases we're dealing with the bringing of incense. In the case of Nadav and Avihu, they did it on their own free will. In the case of Korach and his Aidah, in the case of Zotan and Aviran, right, another pair, then we're talking about a commandment, okay? That apparently Moshe is giving to Korach and his bunch, okay? So, verse 7, Utenu bahen ish, wasimu alehen, ktoret lifnei Yahweh, mahar v'haya ha'ish asher yibhar Yahweh, hu hakadosh rav lachem b'nei Lewi. Okay, so God is gonna choose by making it clear. We're all gonna put incense on our fire pans, and God's is gonna make it clear who He's choosing. Right? But it's not about me. Moshe's saying God's the boss. He's gonna show what He wants. And again, it's interesting. This is I guess a very Jewish or Israeli. Moshe is now throwing back the same words right here at Nadav and I'm sorry, at Dotan and Aviram. I always get the two bunches mixed up, right? So Dotan and Aviram, Moshe is throwing back the same words that, or I should say, really, that Korach used, right? So he uses this phrase that we just looked up. We saw it in First Kings, right? When Yerovam says Rav lechem to go to Jerusalem, it's too much for you to go to Jerusalem, and they builds the two golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan. So here, Korach is saying, Yomru alehem Rav lechem. Okay, so Korach and his bunch are saying to Moshe and Aaron, Rav lechem, you've gone too far, right? Examta, as we might say in modern Hebrew, right? And now Moshe is saying, is saying those exact same words, right? That was kind of the needle that Korach was sticking into Moshe and Aaron, and now Moshe is saying it right back to Korach and his bunch. Rav lechem, examtem, right? Too much, you've gone too far, sons of Levi, referring, of course, to Korach and Dotan and Aviram. Okay, so here we go. We are in verse 8. By the way, if anyone would like to comment or if anyone would like to ask a question, then please feel free to. You can either type it in or you can get onto the microphone. I can let you on if you come into the StreamYard. Okay. Verse 8. V'yomer Moshe el Korach shim'u na b'nei Lewi. Verse 9. Hami'at mekem ki hivdil Elohei Yisrael etchem me'adat Yisrael להקריב אתכם אליו לעבוד את עבודת משכן יחווה ולעמוד בפני העדה לשרתם. We'll get back to that in a second. וקרב אותך ואת כל אחיך בני לוי איתך וביקשתם גם כהונה. It's a question in a sense. לכן אתה וכל עדתך הנועדים על יחווה ואהרון מהו? כי תלינו עליו. Okay? So this is what Moshe answers. So Moshe comes back and says, listen, you guys, you Levites, you already have an exalted position within Israel, right? You're already assisting the Kohanim. You're already working. You're carrying the Mishkan from place to place. You're dealing with the holy items, right? We're supposed to go to the judge or to the Levites, right? So the Levites are already their leaders among Israel. You're already in the configuration of the Mishkan, right? So Israel in tabernacle, right? You're already in the inner circle, right? So here we go. This picture, right? Oops, come on there. And we've got we've got the Levites encamped closest to the tabernacle, right? You're already literally, not figuratively speaking, literally in the inner circle, right? Here you are in the inner circle. The other tribes are around you in the outer concentric circle, right? So, isn't that enough? Okay, well, now you also want the Kehuna. Now you also want to actually be the Kohanim. I mean, be satisfied with what you have, right? This is a classic case of do not covet, right? Of the 10th commandment, do not covet, right? Okay, so there we go. So let's go on. וישלח משה לקרוא לדתן ולאבירם בני אליאב So they refuse to come up to Moshe. Moshe calls for them, and they're like, screw you, basically, right? We're not going to even listen. We're not even going to appear before your insurrection, your January 6th insurrection committee, lahavdil, right? You've subpoenaed us, and we're going to just ignore your subpoena because we don't even give credence to you, Moshe. And so go screw yourself. So okay, that's basically what they're saying to Moshe, right? Hami'at ki he'litanu me'eretz zavat halav udvash. Hamitenu bamidbar ki tistarer alenu gam tistarer. Okay, so now Dotanana, I'm sorry, this is really Korach. Now Korach and his Aidah are really, they're really gonna piss off God basically by saying this. They're calling Egypt the land flowing with milk and honey, right? So they're really sticking it. They're really, you could see they're real Yisraelim. They're really real Israelis. They're real Jews. They really know how to stick it to Moshe when they want to, right? So they're saying to Moshe, you took us out of the land flowing with milk and honey, referring of course to Egypt, to kill us in this desert, okay? And then we have this verb histarer. So most translations, or I guess it's pretty clear, it comes from the word sar. We've seen this word before, okay? So a sar is a ruler or a prince, as we see here. The translation, the BDD, will also, I'm sure, give a pretty similar translation. Where'd the BDD go? BDD, hello. No, that's weird. It's not BDD here. Strange. Okay, whatever. Anyway, it'll give the same translation, right? So historer is make yourself a ruler, exalt yourself, make yourself a prince or ruler over us, right? Bamidbar ki histarer alenu gam histarer. Okay, we have here repetition. We've said many times that when we see repetition in biblical Hebrew, that is always emphasis, right? There's really I guess there are other ways, but basically the most common way to emphasize something is to repeat it, right? So basically, what Korach is saying here, do you really think you're gonna, or do you, how do you explain the fact that, how do you really explain the fact that that you've decided to rule over us, right? Are you really going to rule over us? Who the heck do you think you are, right? Mieta, right? We have a couple of Israelis here today, some Israeli gestures, right? So okay, so the story is really Israeli. Aflo el eretz zavat halav udvash hevi atanu, watiten lanu nahlat sadeh wakarem wa'ainei ha'anashim hahem tinaker lo na'aleh. Okay, so now they're saying you never took us up to a land of milk and honey, right? Of course, we know that the reason that the Israelites were not taken up to the land of milk and they would have already probably been there is what we saw in was it the previous parsha or 2 parshas ago? I think it was the previous parsha. Was the parasha of the spies, right? So the punishment for the spies spying out the land for 40 days and coming back 10 of the 12 spies coming back with the bad report was that Israel would now wander in the desert for 40 years, right? It says 1 year for each day, 1 year for each day, right? So so that's the reason, and now typical kind of shall we say I don't know, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, where you turn things around, on the other person, right? You're let's say a typical person with something like narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. If they're a very angry person, then they're gonna say to their partner, you're a very angry person, right? You're full of anger, when in fact it's them, right? So it's the same thing here, right? They're blaming Moshe and they're blaming Aaron for them being stuck in this desert for 40 years, right? And not being able to come up to the land of Israel, when it was in fact the children of Israel who caused us and not Moshe, right? So they're projecting. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any comments? Anybody want to say anything? If so, just type it in. I like to have a discussion rather than just a lecture, but okay. I will go on. If you have anything to say or any comments to make, please do so. Okay. ויחר למשה מאוד, we're in verse 15. Oops. ויחר למשה מאוד, ויאמר אל יחווה אל תפן אל מנחתם, לא חמור אחד מהם נשאתי, ולא הראותי את אחד מהם. Okay, so Moshe now is angry, and he's basically saying, I never even took a single hamor, a single donkey from them. Okay, and I've never done anything wrong to them. Right? Moshe is what's the word? What's the phrase? Righteous indignation. Although I think actually righteous indignation means kind of faking it, like you think you're in the right when you're actually not. But he is in the right this time, and he has this righteous. I think you can also use it in a non-sarcastic sense. So there's righteous indignation. He's really, really upset that they're accusing of these things when he's never wanted this job in the first place. He's been completely straightforward, honest, never done anything to the nation of Israel except try to help them, and now they're making up these false accusations and accusing him of appointing himself leader or taking over the nation for his own personal gain. Right? This reminds me very much of the speech that Shmuel in the end of the first book. No, in the end of the second book of Shmuel. It's going to be right before. No, it's not going to be. It's in the end of the first book of Shmuel. Let's find it. In fact, I bet this is it right here, 1 Samuel 11. I think this is why the Haftorah is in 1 Samuel 11. I think that's where it is. Let me just pop it in the English. Hello. Whoa, what's going on here? Let's try it again. No, it's not. Wait a second. So I've got to find it. So this is before Shaul. So it's going to be, I guess, at the beginning. Let's try for Samuel 5. So before this, for Samuel 3. Here we go. No, it's going to be after this. For Samuel 4. This one's actually arc, death of Eli. Almost there. Samuel 5. Where do we go? It's right before Shaul. 6, 7. No, it's still Shmuel. Here we go. Israel asks for a king. Let me just find it. I can't find the second one. I'll just get back to the Parsha. So king. I think this is it. I can't find it right now. Anyway, when Shmuel gives one of his final speeches, when the nation is asking for a king, right? He says, let's see if I can find it. I can't find it. But Shmuel basically says a similar phrase, right? He says, if anyone have I ever taken? I think he says a donkey, if I'm not mistaken. Have I ever taken a donkey from anyone? Have I ever taken anything from anyone? Similar kind of phrase, right? So. Anyway, it just reminded me of that, but I can't find it right now. I'd have to look it up. Okay, so anyway, getting back to here, we are in verse 16. ויאמר משה אל קורח, אתה וכל עדתך היו לפני יחווה אתם, היו לפני, it's a commandment, be לפני יחווה אתם והם ואהרון מחר. Okay, so now Korach is going to have to show up. Going to have to present himself, and verse 17, Gehu ish machtato ונתתם עליהם קטורת, והקרבתם לפני יהוה איש מחתתו 50 ו200 מחתות, ואתה ואהרון איש מחתתו. Okay, so each of the 250 people are going to take their fire censers, and so is Aaron, right? We all know the story, so let's skip ahead a little bit. Verse 18. Well, verse 18, let's try that again. Let's highlight 18 and 19. Verse 18. وَيَكْخُوا إِشْ مَخْتَطُهُ وَيِثْنُوا عَلَيْهِمْ عَيْشْ وَيَعْصِمُوا عَلَيْهِمْ كِطَارَةً وَيَعْمْدُوا פתח אוהל מועד ומשה ואהרון ויקהל עליהם קורח את כל העדה אל פתח אוהל מועד וירא כבוד יהוה אל כל העדה. Okay, so now Korach comes with his 250 men, okay, and everybody's watching, and everybody's got their fire sensors. Verse 20. וידבר יהוה אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור היבדלו מתוך העדה הזאת ואכלה אותם כרגע ויפלו על פניהם ויאמרו אל אלוהי הרוחות לכל בשר האיש אחד יחטא וכל העדה תקצוף. Okay, so here we go. Moshe again is sticking his neck out for in this case, I think the Eidah is referring to all of the people of Israel. It's not clear if it's talking about the 250 people or all of the people of Israel. I believe all. Okay, so God says, separate yourselves from this congregation, and I'll just destroy them. I will consume all of them. Okay, and Moshe and Aaron fell on their faces and said, and they said, El Elohei Ruchot, right? God of all spirits, of the spirits, the Chol Basar, the spirits of all flesh. Is one man going to sin, and you're going to get angry at the entire congregation? So here again, we spoke about this in last week's parsha, right? This is we've seen this with Moshe a number of times now. We've seen this with Abraham, right? When he is defending Sodom and Amorah, right? He basically uses a similar argument, right? Are you going to sweep away the sinners with the innocent, right? Is Hashofet kol haolam lo yaseh mishpat, is the judge over all of the world not going to do justice, right? It's basically the same argument, right? It's the same kind of argument. So Moshe is now saying to God, are you going to do something that's morally incorrect? You're going to kill everyone off just because a couple of people sinned, right? So we've seen this type of moral argument where the patriarchs will make logical arguments to God, basically in a certain sense, pointing out God's hypocrisy. We saw this very same thing with the case of the spies. Okay, where again God says He wants to wipe out the entire congregation, and Moshe comes back and says, if you do that, then the other nations are going to see that, and they're going to say God is not strong enough. God is not strong enough to take the congregation out of Egypt and bring them to the land that He promised. Right? You're going to make yourself look like a fool. You're going to look like a hypocrite, right? So the patriarchs, or Abraham and Moshe in particular, and specifically, are using these kind of logical arguments, in a sense, pointing out inconsistencies in God's actions or in God's thoughts. It's really kind of an amazing thing, and it goes against the typical vision that we have of God, of this infallible entity, right? And yes, you could say this is just kind of a test, but I think it's more than a test. I think it's a conversation. God trusts Moshe, and God is telling Moshe what's on his mind. It's kind of like, let's say, I don't know. Let's say, I can't think of an example. Let's say a father is driving the car with his son, and the father says, I really want to go, I don't know, to the bar and have a couple of drinks, and I don't know why I'm using this example. I don't drink a lot, but at any rate, neither my father doesn't drink at all, except for Shabbat Kiddush wine. But the father knows, he knows he shouldn't be doing this, but that's what's on his mind at the moment. And then the son says, "No, don't do that. It's not good. You're going to drink and drive, and it's dangerous, and you have a drinking problem, and all this kind of stuff, right?" So it's the son who kind of comes back at the father in this mashal, in this example, and kind of saves the father from his own initial impulses. So I think really that's what's going on. I think it's just too simplistic, shall we say, too Christian or too pagan a view to say that God is this, infallible, unemotional, distant kind of creator who, is unable to, have any emotions or impulses or thoughts. I don't think that's the case. I think that Yahweh is clearly very emotional, right? He says he loves Israel. He says he loves Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right? He speaks about love. You can't be detached if you could speak about love, right? And this is the way he's actually kind of feeling. He's an emotional, just as we have emotions that we're made in his image and in his likeness. So Yahweh also has emotions, right? And he's really upset at this point. But it's his son Moshe who kind of has to put him back on track. So it's a conversation. It's a dialogue. It's much more complicated, I think, than just the kind of two-dimensional Christian / pagan view of God as this distant, infallible, unemotional, almost like a computer. God is not a computer. Okay, we are not. The universe is not run by a computer. Our Father in heaven is not a Macintosh Airbook, right? So that's really what's going on here, right? Moshe and Yahweh are in a very close, deep, loving father-son relationship, and this is Yahweh's initial reaction. He's really upset about this whole thing, and Moshe is the son at this point, putting him back on track. Okay, so that's my little mashal for what's going on there. Okay, so verse 23. וידבר יחווה אל משה לאמור, so Yahweh said to Moshe, saying, דבר אל העדה לאמור, העלו מסביב למשכן קורח ודותן ואבירם. Okay, so basically God saying, okay, get away from these people, Korach and his bunch. Okay. ויקם משה וילך אל דתן ואבירם וילכו אחריו זקני ישראל. Okay. So Moshe goes to Dothan and Aviram and the elders of Israel. I know someone who keeps on saying that the elders of Israel were the Sanhedrin. Okay, I think that's kind of too simplistic an analogy, too silly an analogy, one could even say, but I won't get into that right now. וידבר אל העדה לאמור, סורו נא מעל אוהלי האנשים הרשעים האלה, ואל תיגעו בכל אשר להם פן תיספו בכל חטאתם. Okay, so speak to, so this is again God telling Moshe, speak to all of the congregation, to all of again we're translating Aidah as witnessing community, the word Aid, right? Speak to all of the witnessing community and say, get away from the tents of these people, these evil people, and don't touch anything that belongs to them. Pen tisafu bechol chatvotam, okay? Lest you be washed away in all of their sins. And again, this, I don't know if this is intentional. It may very well be, but this really harkens back to the language that we see, if I can find it here, in the story of Sodom and Amorah, which I think is Genesis 13, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So, oops. No, it's not. It's afterwards. Here we go. It's 18. Here we go. Right? So it's exactly the same word, actually, if we could find it. 1 second. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Verse Genesis 18:24. So Abraham, in arguing for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, says, "Ulai yesh 50 tzadikim b'toch ha'ir ha'af tispe v'lo tisa l'makom למען hamnom." Looking for one particular phrase. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. I mean, that's close enough, but I want to find the exact phrase that I was looking for. One second. Here it is. It's right above. Okay, this is the verse I was looking for. So, right. So, Avram, Yigash Avraham, Yomer Ha'af Tisbet Tzadik Aim Rasha, right? You also wipe away or sweep away the righteous person together with the evil person, right? That's basically Abraham's logical argument, basically saying to God, right, that it's not appropriate for you, to kill innocent people along with evil people, right? And the word used here is tisper, sweep away, to wash away. It's exactly the same word that's used here, okay? Tisafu, okay? So here God is using that same word, tisafu, right? Wash away, right? So God is saying to the congregation, get away from these people, lest you also be washed away through, through all their sins, right? That same idea of, if you're innocent, step away from them, because otherwise you as innocent people are going to be washed away together with these wicked people, right? It's the same kind of language. And I can't help but think that this is kind of intentionally, that God, when he's saying this, is kind of intentionally hearkening back to what Avraham says to regarding Sodom back in Genesis 18. Okay, verse 27. ויעלו מעל משכן קורח דותן ואבירם מסביב, ודותן ואבירם יצאו ניצבים פתח אוהליהם ונשיהם ובניהם וטפם. Okay, so now Korach, Dotan, and Aviram come out with their entire families. ויאמר משה בזאת תדעון כי יהוה שלחני לעשות כל המעשים האלה כי לא מליבי. And Moshe says, now you're going to find out that that I didn't appoint myself over Israel, it's God. Okay, I have nothing to do with this. I didn't even want the job from day one. All right, כי אם כמות כל האדם ימותון אלא בפקודת כל האדם יפקד עליהם לא יהוה שלחני. So im kimot kol adam yimutun ele. Okay, so if these people die the way all people die, upikodat kol adam yifkod aleim, and that's basically repetition. And this word pakad is usually translated as revisit. It's not a very good translation, but that's the usual English translation of the word. But really means to recompense or to come back upon, or to we'll go with recompense, right? So if these people die the way everyone dies, if these people meet their end or recompensed, meet their final end in the same way that all people meet their final end. So this is repetition. Repetition means emphasis. Here it's using the word lamut, die. Here it's using the word pakad, which means again to retribution or payback, or we'll go with payback or retribution. Okay, lo Yahweh Shilachani, then it's not God who sent me. So Moshe is basically saying these people are going to die in a way that it's going to make it very clear to everyone watching that this is not a regular death. This is something that's coming from God. Okay, this is a miracle. Okay, Wa'im Bri'ah Yivra Yahweh Ufatzta Adama et Piha Uba'ala Otam Wa'et Kol Asher Lahem Wayardu Haim She'ola. Okay, and this is usually translated as if a new creation, let's see how Robert Alter deals with it. I never actually liked the translation, but we'll go with it. Let's get a Robert Alter on that one. Verse 30. Bet he's going to say something. Yeah, the new thing. Okay, that's a little bit better than new creation, right? So basically, Moshe is setting up the stage for something, totally, unexpected. Something totally out of this world is going to happen, right? And now he's saying what it's going to be. The earth is going to open up its mouth and swallow them and everything that belongs to them, and they're going to go down into the Sheol. So Sheol, it's a very complicated concept, but basically in its most simplistic form, means a pit. It just means a physical pit. It means the grave or a pit that you dig in the earth, right? But it also is the idea is that the body. No, it's a bit complicated, but Sheol is also kind of this spiritual place where dead people waiting for the end of days, waiting for the resurrection that's spoken about explicitly in Daniel 12:2 and implicitly in other places, right? So this is the Sheol. So it usually has this double meaning of a physical pit or grave, but also it's not really hell, but also like this spiritual resting place until the day of judgment, until the end of days. Okay, but in this case, they're literally going to sink down into a physical pit, but they're also going to die, so they're also going to this Sheol. Sheol is sometimes translated as hell. That's a very bad translation because the ancient Israelite concept of Sheol is not very similar to hell. It's kind of like again a place where disassociated souls sleep and rest and wait for Judgment Day. We see this in the case when Shaul goes to the witch of Ein Dor and tries to raise up Shmuel, and Shmuel says, "Lama hirgastani la lototi min makom hazeh." I think those are the exact words, right? Why are you shaking me up and rising me up from this place, right? Why are you waking me up? Okay, I'm sleeping and you're bothering me. That's basically what Shmuel says to Shaul through the of Ein Dor, and of course he goes on to say, tomorrow you're going to be here with me, and the next day Shaul and Yonatan are killed in battle. Okay, at any rate, Yadatim ki natsu anashim ha'ele et Yahweh. So you're going to know that natsu again is usually translated as anger, or maybe more like what would be the word? To reject, right? So let's see how Robert Alter translates that one. That's verse 30. Close this off. Okay, that these people despised Yahweh. Okay, so verse 31. ויהי ככלתו לדבר את כל הדברים האלה ותבקע האדמה אשר תחתיהם. Verse 32. ותפתח הארץ את פיה ותבלע אותם ואת בתיהם ואת כל האדם אשר לקורח ואת כל הרכוש. So basically Korach and all his Edah get swallowed up. Okay, the land opens up its mouth, literally, holes open up, and down they go. Verse 33, what yaruduhem akol asher lahem hayim, and they were alive, right? Can you imagine the horror of this, right? It's like what are you, in Florida or something? It's almost as horrible as being in Florida, right? It's in Florida full of sinkholes. You're just walking along in your Hawaiian shirt and your pink short pants, and towards the beach with a surfboard in your hand, and all of a sudden and you're gone. Okay, I have a friend who grew up in Florida who always used to say Florida is not fit for human habitation. I don't know. I've been there twice, but only in northern Florida. Okay, in Orlando. So וירדוהם כל אשר להם חיים שאולה ותכס עליהם הארץ ויעבדו מתוך הקהל. Okay. And then the earth closed up upon them, right? So it's like, the whole thing just disappears, right? They're gone. And everything is back to the way it was. It's almost like something out of a horror movie or something like that, right? It definitely is. Im kamot kol hadam yamutun ele ubikudat kol hadan ufaked aleim lo Yahweh shelachani, right? If this is going to be a regular kind of death, then Yahweh is not behind this. Well, this is definitely not a regular kind of death, right? This is something straight out of the movies. Okay, verse 34. וכל ישראל אשר סביבותיהם נסו לעולם כי אמרו פן תבלענו הארץ. So now Israel starts crying, right? Because they're afraid that they're going to get swallowed up too. Typical Israelite behavior, right? They complain, and then when something happens, they cry like little babies. We've seen this already a number of times. Verse 35. "והאש יצא מאת יהוה ותאכל את 50 ו200 איש מקריבי הקטורת." Okay, so the other 250 are killed. Basically, right? Fire goes out, and instead of the fire is supposed to burn the incense, and instead it comes down and burns them to ashes. Exactly the same way in Leviticus 8, was it that Nadav and Avihu die as well? Exactly the same way, right? They're holding their incense, and fire comes down and burns them to ashes, basically. Okay. Verse 36. So that's the end of the narrative. Does anybody have any comments, or anyone have any questions? Anyone want to say anything? Questions or comments? No? Okay. Just type it in, or even better yet, come onto StreamYard, and then we can have a discussion rather than a lecture, which I hate. Okay. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור, verse 37. אמור אל אלעזר בן אהרון הכהן וירם I'm sorry, וירם את המחטות מבין השרפה ואת האש זרה הלאה כי קדשו. Okay, so now God speaks about these machtot, these censer pans, or these fire pans, whatever you want to call them, right? So you're going to pick them up out of the fire, and well, let's see, zare hala, and the fire, you're going to basically, I think it's trying to say dissipate, but I want to get some clarification on that. It's verse 37. What? Here we go. 37. Oh, sometimes they have the different numbering systems. There we go. Yes, scatter the fire abroad. So I don't know exactly what that means. As far as I know, it just means like put it out, basically, right? But let's see. Let's see what Everett Fox translates it as. Oh, and the fire coals scatter yonder. That's how he deals with it. Commentary here. Scatter the fire, hot ashes. Okay, so that's what Robert Alter is saying, is that where it's scatter the fire, he's saying it could mean hot ashes. That is in accordance with what Everett Fox is saying. Okay, the fire coals scatter yonder because they become holy. We can check. Oh shoot, do that. We can check real quickly the Ibn Ezra and see what he has to say about that. As you know, I've been looking at the Ibn Ezra's commentary lately. I really, really like his commentary. Very, 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 very different from Rashi, or as I like to call him, Rash. Because when I used to type in the word Rashi a long time ago in Microsoft Word, it would always spell correct Rashi to Rash. So I call him Rash. Okay, but Ibn Ezra is really good. He's really, really good. He brings out a lot of points, and he's very good with Hebrew grammar, and he doesn't give all this nonsense like Rashi does. So let's take a look at the Ibn Ezra on this, just for kicks and giggles. And we are in verse, well, it's going to be, I think it's going to list it as 17. Let's see. Okay, Ibn Ezra. Sorry, Ibn Ezra. We're going to Numbers, and we are going probably to 17, I would think. 2, scatter the far yonder, ki ahar she'ikrivum l'Hashem hinam l'Hashem hinam ketoshim. So it's not really saying anything. Okay, ikrivum. Oh, that's talking about the machtot. Okay, it machtot. Okay, so he doesn't have a commentary on that specific idea. Okay, on this idea of what it means, ha'esh zareh hala, right? So this would either mean put out the fire, right? Just like put out the fire, or spread the ashes all over the place because they're holy. Okay, we can get an NIV translation on this. I actually like the NIV translation often. So here. How do you make atonement? No. No, before this. After this. Scatter the coals some distance away. So the NIV is also going with that translation. Or we can look at some, not interlinear, I think we do parallel, is it? Yeah, these are all the different translations. And we're looking at verse, what was it? 37. 1637. And we can kind of get a consensus of these various English translations. Right, scatter the coals is the NIV. Scatter the coals, NLV, English Standard Version. Scatter the fire, far and wide. So they go with fire rather than coals. Beauty and Study Bible, whatever the heck that is. King James Bible, scatter thou the fire yonder. Well, they usually go a little bit more literal. Scatter the fire, etc., etc. So this is kind of a consensus. Most of them say the coals, but some actually do say the fire. Right. And we can look at some of these commentaries, which also I've been checking out sometimes. Most of them I've never heard of, but some of them are pretty good, actually. So let's just take this one at random. Matthew Henry's Concise Commentary. I have no idea who Matthew Henry is. Maybe he came on the Mayflower. I don't know. And I'm not going to look him up right now. Fire went out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men that offered the incense, while Aaron, who stood with them, was preserved alive. God is jealous of the honor of his own institutions, will not have them invaded. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. The senses are devoted, and as all devoted things must be made serviceable to the glory of God. This covering of the altar would remind the children of Israel of this event, that others may hear and fear. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't say anything explicitly about the fire. So this Barnes Notes on the Bible says the coals. Okay. All right. So either the fires or the coals. We'll leave it at that, and let's move on. Okay, verse 38. So Wolfgang, who always has some very interesting thoughts, says the rabbinic obfuscation as to making the questioning of them tantamount to what Korach did with Moses lacks the backing of God himself, as Moses had. Disregarding the rabbis leads to a happier and more functional life. Disregarding Moses brought instant retribution. Okay, interesting point. All righty. So, where were we? Verse 38. Et mahtot ha-hatta'im ha'ele bi-nafshotam ויעשו אותם ריקועי פחים ציפוי למזבח כי יקרבום לפני יהוה ויקדשו ויהיו לאות לבני ישראל. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to take these machtot, these fire censers, and asu otam riku'ei pachim. So you're going to make them into, okay, so riku'ei, that comes from the underlying word araka, okay, maybe most famous in the word arakia, which we find in Genesis 1, which I know two Karaites who constantly argue about the meaning of this. I won't even get into that. But at any rate, it means like a rakia or in this case, riku'e pachim is like a beaten out plate. It's like a you take metal and you beat it out into a thin plate. Okay. So riku'e pachim and pach in modern Hebrew, a pach is a can, but let's get a biblical Hebrew translation of the word pach. Yes, bird trap, that's for sure. Let's see here. PDB, used of trap, metaphor, usually figurative, mukesh, resh, samim, calamities and plots, source, noun, plate of metal. Okay. So here it refers, so here the BDB is referring to Numbers 17:3. Okay. We also have in Exodus 39:3. We can take a look at that very briefly. In Exodus 39:3, they hammered out thin sheets of gold, and he cut threads from them to interweave with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and the fine linen in a skillful design. I believe that's speaking about the ephod of the priest. But let's look for a second. 39. Yeah, so here it is. So it's speaking about the ephod, and we could look at the Hebrew on that one. So that's 39:3. And we have here, wa yiraku et pahei zahav wa kitzitz pitilim. Let's highlight it first. We yiraku et pahei zahav wa kitzitz pitilim לעשות בתוך התכלת, בתוך הארגמן, בתוך תולעת השני ובתוך השש מעשה חושב. Okay, so that's basically what we just read in the English, but we have here in Hebrew the phrase wa yiraku et pahei hazahav. So basically it means beat out plates of gold, right? What was the English for that one? Oops. 3. So here they're translating it as pachei are thin sheets, plates, right? And yiraku, okay, is to beat out. So you're taking metal and you're beating it out into a thin sheet. Now, I'm not a metal worker. Unfortunately, it sounds like a nice job, actually. Hard job, but a nice job. So I don't know exactly how that works, but somehow or another, you pound the metal until it becomes thin. Like I guess that's what they do with tinfoil or something like that. At any rate, we should take a very brief look at, since we mentioned it, and since it is so important, at Genesis chapter 1. And here it is in verse 6. Okay. Whoops. ויאמר אלוהים יהי רקיע מתוך המים. Okay. We got wayahi mavdir ben mayim lemayim. So there's going to be now this in the sky, this rakia. It's usually translated as firmament. That's a horrible translation, or it doesn't really express what it is. It basically means a beaten out plate, right? And it's going to separate between water and water. What does that even mean? Okay. Well, basically what that means is if you look up into the sky, then we know we have water above, right? That's the rain. We know we have water below. That's the lakes and the ponds and the rivers and the ocean and all that kind of stuff. And now we're going to have this rakia. We're going to have this, sometimes it's translated as a dome, which I also think is a bad translation. This so-called, metaphorically speaking, beaten out plate. It's as if you look up into the sky and you see think of it as looking up into the sky and seeing the sky as kind of like I guess you can call it a dome, but it's called a plate that's beaten out into the shape of a dome, right? And this, figuratively speaking, and again, I say figuratively speaking because I don't think, despite the fact that you will find these, if you look up, these, sometimes you'll see these diagrams of biblical cosmology, they'll actually imply that the Israelites actually believed there was a real dome there that separated from water above and water below. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think the Israelites are that stupid, and they're certainly not as stupid as certain people I know who think there really is a dome in the sky. At any rate, so it's figuratively speaking, right? It's if you look up into the sky, it looks like you're looking at a dome, right? Let's say a blue dome with clouds painted on it. That's what it looks like from our perspective. And we know that from above the dome, again, from our perspective, figuratively speaking, we have water that comes down. That's the rain. And we know that we have water below the dome. And that's, again, the bodies of water, rivers, lakes, streams, ocean, etc. Right? So this rakia is, figuratively speaking, supposed to separate between these two sets of waters, the water below and the water above. We know that in the case of the flood in the Mabul, in Genesis 6, it's mentioned in 7, when it speaks about the flood waters. Okay, let me just find it here for 1 second. A specific phrase I'm looking for. 1 second. One second. Okay, I can't find the exact verse right now, but it speaks about the flood waters from below. Actually, I would like to find it. Oh gosh, where is that? Give me 1 second here. Sorry. Where is it? Maybe the next verse. This is a retelling of a story. No, it's going to be before that. Maybe it's 6. No, it's got to be in 7 by process of elimination. ויבוא אשתו ונשבת תיבה מפני בעליה מהתורה שיהי לשבעת ימים בשנת. I can't find it right now. Okay, at any rate, it speaks about the waters opening up in the flood, that the waters came up from the Tehom. Oh God, so much to say about this, and we're going to get totally off track. But the waters came up from the Tehom, from the depths. Okay, we know that also that the Tehom is mentioned in Genesis 1, right? So in Genesis 1, we have the depths, right? Ruach Elohim mirachefet al pnei Tehom, and that's right here. Okay. I'm sorry, it says al pnei hamayim. Before that, it says choshech al pnei Tehom, right? So this is the depths. Okay, so the waters came up in the flood of Noah. The waters came up from the depths, and then it says also opened up arubot hashamayim. They usually translate it as the water pipes of the sky, meaning the water poured down from the sky. So the water came up from the depths. The water came down from the sky. We see in Genesis 1, right over here in verse 6, that it's the rakia, specifically this beaten out plate in the shape of a blue dome, right? Shall we say, that separates between the waters that are above, okay? Okay? So it's separating between the waters that are above the rakia and the waters that are below the rakia. The waters that are above the below the rakia are in the Tehom, in the depths. Okay, so that's what opens up that's one of the things that opens up during Noah's flood. The other ones that are above the rakia, okay, this is the arubot hashamayim, right? These are the water pipes of the sky are opened up literally, and water comes raining down. So the rakia, which is supposed to separate between these two, is basically not doing its job during Noah's flood, right? The waters are coming from the top, they're coming from the bottom, and they're just making one giant mabul. They're making one giant flood, which ends up wiping out all of the creation of the earth. So, anyway, let's unwind a little bit. Let's unwind some of our nested loops here. So that's what rakia is. Okay, rakia is a beaten out plate. By analogy, it's the dome of the sky. Okay, you could think of it again as like a blue material that's beaten out into the shape of a dome. So when we look at it from the earth, we see this Figuratively speaking, we see this blue plate, this blue dome above us. Okay, that's what rakia is. We saw it also in Exodus. Where was it? 35? No, Exodus 39, where the rakia, where a gold plate is beaten out. Okay, pach zahav yiraku et pachei zahav, and notice we have the two words raka and pach. Okay, so they beat out a plate of gold. All right, and this is exactly the same phrase that we have here. Okay, riku'e pachim. Okay, so here we have raka and here we have pach. It's the same phrase that we saw in Exodus 39, right? So what's happening is that so basically make it a beaten out work of sheets, you could say. Okay, and it's going to be a tzipui. It's going to be a cover for the whatchamacall, for the mizbeach. Okay, so which mizbeach? Right, there are two mizbeachs. There's the incense altar, and there is the altar outside. Now, I can't remember if it explicitly says the incense altar, but I'm going to assume this is the incense altar, right? Wouldn't that make more sense? These are incense censers, okay? Plus the incense altar. Let me just see one thing here. One second. Where is it? 1 second. One second here. Okay, so it is speaking about kol atatcha, the 250 people. So we have 250 fire sensors. Okay, I guess that is a lot of fire sensors. If we beat out all of 250 fire sensors into a thin piece, I guess it's kind of big enough to cover the main altar, right? That's outside the ohel moed, the altar of where the altar where the burnt offerings are brought, right? Where the offerings are brought. Let's see if we get some clarification. I don't remember offhand, actually. But then again, it would be more logical that it's used to cover the incense altar, right? The incense altar is inside the Kodesh, the holy area. And it is, let's see, when you walk in, it's on the left. No, it's in the middle. The menorah is on the left, the showbread table is on the right, and the incense altar is right in the middle. Okay, so all right. So let's leave that as a question mark. Are we talking about the altar outside, the sacrifice altar, or are we talking about the incense altar? Okay. Okay. Oh no. Oops. We're down here. כלמזבח כי הקריבום לפני יהוה ויקדשו והיו לאות לבני ישראל. So at any rate, this altar cover, which is made out of the incense pans of Dotan and Aviram, Korach, Dotan, Aviram, and the other 250. And by the way, I think that the Dotan and Aviram are included in the 250. So at any rate, Korach, Dotan, Aviram, and the rest of the 248, I guess. This is now going to be a cover for the altar, and it's going to be a sign. A sign is, it's basically always, when you see the word ot, unless it's being used figuratively, then it's also, as in the case of ot al yedecha v'totafot be'einecha, that's a figurative use of the word ot, but when it's being used in a literal sense, as it is here, right, it always means something physical, right? Something that's visible to other people, right? So the Shabbat is an ot. When we Israel or when other nations see all of Israel resting on the Shabbat, this is a sign, right, that we're following the ways of God. This is something that can be visibly seen or heard, I guess, or smelled maybe, but basically seen, right? So this is now going to be a sign. This is going to be a visual reminder to the children of Israel of what not to do and what not to be. Okay, verse 39. ויקח אלעזר הכהן את מחטות הנחושת אשר הקריבו הצירופים וירקעום ציפו למזבח. Okay, so then Elazar the Kohen does this. Verse 40. זיכרון לבני ישראל למען אשר לא יקרב איש זר אשר לא מזרע אהרון הוא להקטיר קטורת לפני יהוה ולא יהיה כקורח וכעבדתו כאשר דיבר יהוה ביד משה לו. All right, so this is now going to be a remembrance. And zikaron also is a remembrance, right? It's a memorial or remembrance. Again, it's a sign to remember something. Okay, so it's an ot and it's a zikaron. So it's a physical sign and it's gonna remind you of something. Okay, that no foreign fire should be brought. Okay, this is a second, again, as I mentioned before, this is a second situation we've had with foreign fire being brought. The first was with Nadav and Avihu, the two eldest sons of Aharon, back in Leviticus 8, and they were also put to death. And the second one is here with Korach and his congregation. Okay, and also we have here, so Ishzar asher lo mizera Aharon who lachtir ketoret lifnei Yahweh, right? So anyone who's not from the seed of Aaron is not to bring lachtir ketoret, is not to bring incense before Yahweh, right? So again, this would imply that we're talking about the altar, the incense altar. It would make much more logical sense for these machtot to be made into covers for the incense altar rather than sacrificial altar. Let's see again if we have any commentary here. Let's see. Plating, so that's how he translates pach. Hammered sheets of plating, so that's how he translates riku'e pach. Or riku'e pachim, is it? Okay. All right. Let's go on, and maybe it'll become clear again from context. Let me close this off. Verse 41. Okay, well, here we go with the Israelites complaining again. Why? Ilon kol adat bnei Israel mimaharat al Moshe wa al Aharon limor atem hamitem et am Yahweh. So now that all of the congregation of Israel are complaining to Moses, you've killed the people of the Lord. You've killed the people of Yahweh, right? Speaking about Korach and this congregation, I guess they had a kind of popular following, okay? Or the congregation didn't see it fit for this punishment. But again, Moshe has absolutely nothing to do with this, right? It's all God. Why he bihi kahel ha'ida al Moshe wa al Haron wa ifnu el wahel mu'ed wa hine sahu anan wiyar kavod Yahweh. So the congregation actually this would imply kahel ha'ida al Moshe. They like formed a mob. It's basically what it's implying. So here, Robert Alter translates assembled against Moshe and against Aaron. Everett Fox, assembled against. But it says assembled against, okay? Ikahela eda al Moshe. So this implies, right? Al would imply it's not le, it's not to, it implies, regarding or on or towards, right? It really implies a mob in a certain sense, right? They're going to mob, maybe even kill Moshe. Verse 43. ויבוא משה ואהרון אל פני אוהל מועד. Let's go through 44 and 45. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור. הרומו מתוך העדה הזאת ואכלה אותם כרעה ויפלו על פניהם. So again, God gives his offer, right? I'm gonna get away from these people, just like you got away from just like all the people got away from Korach and his get away from all of these people. I'll finish them off. ויאמר משה אל אהרון, קח את המחתה ועטן עליה אש מעל המזבח, ושים קטורת וחולך מהרה אל העדה וכפר עליהם כי יצא הקצף מלפני יהוה החל הנרף. Okay, so Moshe says to Aaron, so Moshe's not even allowed to do this because he's not a Kohen, but he says to Aaron, okay, now you take your fire censer. Here we go again with the fire censers and the Ketoret, right? So he's going to take his fire. So now Aaron's going to take his fire censer. So now he's allowed to, right? Remember that the idea was that only Kohanim, right? This was mentioned explicitly above, right? That you want also the Kahuna, right? That only the Kohanim are allowed to take are allowed to put fire or allowed to put incense, to burn incense in an incense altar, right? Or the incense, right? There's a specific recipe for the incense, this holy incense, right? So now Aaron is allowed to do this, and he's now doing it again. We have this again, this repetition, this theme of the mahtot, right? The mahtat, the mahta, and the ketoret and the incense, right? So now this is almost like the cure is the same as the disease. The disease was the improper bringing of ketoret, and now here the cure is going to be the proper bringing of ketoret. And again, I would say that even though it just says the altar, I would say from the context here and just from logical sense that the covering is speaking about the incense altar and not the sacrificial altar, not the altar of sacrifices outside the kadosh area, outside the holy area. Okay, so there was always already a plague that had broken out among the people. Vayikach, verse 47, Vayikach Aaron כאשר דיבר משה ירץ אל תוך הקהל והנה החל הנרף בעם וייתן את הקטורת ויכפר על העם. Okay, so then he actually does what Moshe told him to do. Verse 48, ויעמוד בין המתים ובין החיים ותעצר המגפה. Okay, he stands between the living and the dead and puts a stop to the plague. ויהיו המתים במגפה 14,700 מלבד המתים על דבר קורח. So how many died in the plague? 14,700 people died in the plague, and this is not including Korach and his bunch. Verse 50, וישב אהרון אל משה אל פתח אוהל מועד והמגפה נעצרה. Okay, so that's how they put the plague to a stop. All right. Let's try to get through at least chapter 17, and then maybe I have to get going. So that's the end of chapter 16 of number 16. Any questions? Any comments? No, nobody. All right, let's go on. וידבר יהוה אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל וכך מאיתם מטה לבית אב מאת כל נשיאיהם לבית אבותם 12 מטות איש את שמו תכתוב על מטהו. So now they're taking, so sometimes the mate is an analogy for the leadership of a tribe, right, or of shall we say a group, right? Usually tribe. I think maybe always a tribe. So at any rate, the mate. Here we're talking about literally mate. The head of the tribe actually had a staff, right, that showed that he was the head of the tribe. Okay, the Nisi'ehem, those are usually translate that as the chiefs or the princes. Literally means the elevated ones, right, from linso, to rise up, nasa. Okay, so so each of these physical staffs are now going to be brought, and each of the one second. Right, and each person is going to write his name. Each of these tribal leaders is going to write their name on their staff. Okay, وَشَمْ أَهْرَونَ تِكْتَبْ عَلَى مَتَى لَوِي, and Aaron's name is going to be written on the staff of Levi. Ki mate had lerosh bet avotam. So again, this is just pointing out there was one staff for each of the heads of the fathers' houses. Okay, basically for each tribe. A second. It's that right there. Okay. وهي נחתם באוהל מועד לפני העדות אשר יועד לכם שמה. So place it before the Ark of the Covenant. The Aidut is the Ark of the Covenant. It literally means the witnessing, or the witness, shall we say? They just translate it here as, let's see, the testimony. Right, that's the way they should translate it. Okay. وحيا האיש אשר אבחר בו מטהו יפרח והשיקותי מעלי את תלונות בני ישראל אשר הם מלינים עליכם. So then I'm going to choose one of these staffs. God says, again, if you're following the English, I'm not going to give a word-for-word translation. And whoever I choose, his staff is going to flower. Let's look at this verb. Hashichoti, not a very common verb. Yeah, I think actually we spoke about this verb when we were studying Genesis. So it does appear in Genesis 8:1. Again, speaking about the flood, Noah's flood. Okay. Ala aretz wa ishku hamayim. Okay. So it's shin chaf, not to be confused with shin chaf het, which means to forget. Okay. This is shin chaf. Number 17:5. That's where we are right now. Esther 2:1. הדברים האלה כשוך חמת המלך. Okay, so this is when this is speaking about King Achashverosh, okay, and we have here Kishoch Hamat Melech, okay, so to subside, okay. Jeremiah, Rishaim, Yeshur, Kishach, Kushim Hatzivu. Okay, all right, we get the idea, all right. So that's what it is here. Mateo Yifrach v'hashichoti, I will make subside. This is the field form, the causative form of shachach. Okay. I will cause to subside from me all of their complaints. Okay. All the complaints upon you, speaking to Moses and Aaron. Speaking about Moses and Aaron. Verse 6. וידבר משה אל בני ישראל ויתנו אליו כל נשיאי מטה לנשיא אחד, מטה לנשיא אחד לבית אבותם 12 מטות ומטה אהרון תוך מטותם. Verse 7. וינח משה את המטות לפני יהוה באוהל העדות. So Moshe this is okay. So in verse 7, Moshe places all of these staffs before Yahweh and Ba'ohel Ha'idut in the tent of meeting. Just want to see one thing here. This is kind of weird. I just noticed something. So Moses is putting down these staffs before the Ark of the Covenant, but Moses is not allowed into where the Ark of the Covenant is, right? Only Aaron is allowed, and only on Yom Kippurim, and only when he has incense in his hand to basically cover up the Idut. So I don't know. I don't have an answer. I just have a question here. We'd have to look into it. So how is Moshe allowed to go in and lay these staffs before the Idut? Moshe is actually not allowed anywhere near the Idut. Only the Kohanim and the Levites are. Well, Moshe is a Levite, but only the Kohanim really are. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I guess maybe context that in this case they're not. There's a specific context in which it's being done. I don't know, just something that popped into my mind. And if we had more time, I'd try to explore it more fully. It's just a question I'm going to put in the back of my mind and wonder about for now. Okay. Verse 8, unless it doesn't mean right in front of the Idut, maybe it doesn't mean right in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Maybe it means, outside in the courtyard, which would really be so outside in the courtyard is really the only place Moshe would be allowed because he's not a Kohen. I don't know. I'll have to think about this more. If anyone has any ideas, please let me know. Okay, verse 8. ויהי ממחרת ויבוא משה אל אוהל העדות, והנה פרח מטה אהרון לבית לוי, ויוצא פרח ויצץ ציץ, ויגמול שקדים. So basically, Aaron's flower has I'm sorry, Aaron's staff is flowered, parach. Uyotze perach, a flower came out. Uyatzatz tzitz. So tzitz is a blossom. The tzitz is also the little gold plate that goes on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol, where it says Kadosh Yahweh. That's the tzitz, and it's also where we get the word tzitzit. Okay, so tzitzit are often translated as fringes. I think we spoke about this before. Let me just look this up for 1 second. So here we have he's translating as shining thing. This is the BDB, plate of gold constituting the diadem on the front of the high priest's mitre. So that's an interesting way to get around it. And that's in, Exodus 39. So let me look. I'm just curious, again, what Robert Alter might do with that. Yes. Leviticus. So, the best way to do is this. So we are going to, we're going to go to Exodus 39. Let's do that. And that was Exodus 39:30. Diadem. Let's look at this. Soon seats Nezer Kodesh. So he just translates it as diadem. That's it. I don't even know what a diadem is. Let's look it up. A jeweled crown or headband worn as a symbol of sovereignty. Okay. This comes from the Greek. Diadem, bind round. The regal headband of the Persian kings. Diadema, from diadem, bind round. Diadem. Okay. So that's what a diadem is. Okay. So a jeweled crown or headband. So headband basically is what it is, right? We'll call it a headband. So that's what the tzitz is. So here the BDB translates to the shining thing. I guess that's somehow the connection between that and a blossom. A blossom is, I don't know, light colored maybe, and this shining thing. I'm not sure what exactly the connection is, but it is where we get the word tzitzit from, which are usually translated as fringes. And let's see, shining thing. Tzitzim. King 618. Let's look. Erez el habayit pinima miklaat pikaim pitorei tzitzim. So your translates as flower. So this is speaking about First Kings. So it's speaking about the palace of King Solomon. At any rate, okay. I remember we studied this, but I can't remember the conclusion we came to. How tzitz is exactly related to tzitzit, but tzitz here in this case is a blossom, a shining thing, a diadem. In the case of the tzitz that's worn on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol, and then the tzitzit is usually translated as a kanfei. Second, right? Fringes. I'm sure we get to fringes. Maybe it's related to shining thing. Maybe it's related to flower. I remember I looked into this and I think we spoke about it, but I forgot exactly what it said. At any rate, just to point out this word tzitz. All right, we're going to get to the end of this chapter, and then I think I'm going to have to stop. So let's do that. Wayigmol, and it pushed out, or it ended with gamal. I guess yielded. There we go. That's translated here. Shkeidim, and made almonds. So basically, we have a whole almond. We have overnight almonds. Again, very clearly miraculous. Even though the very fact that even a flower would come out of a staff is already kind of miraculous. Okay, verse 9. ויוצא משה את כל המטות מלפני יהוה אל כל בני ישראל ויראו ייקחו איש מטהו. So each person takes back his staff. ויאמר יהוה אל משה השב את מטה אהרון לפני העדות למשמרת לאות לבני מרי ותאכל תלונותם מעלי ולא ימותו. Okay, so now Aaron's staff is going to be placed before the Aidut, before the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Testimony. And this is going to remind them so that they don't rebel in the future. Okay, verse 11. Verse 12. ויאמרו בני ישראל אל משה לאמור. And I'll be done in about 5 minutes. Feed them, okay? No, not yet. We amru b'nei Israel. I know, but in the middle of this, and another 5 minutes. You just have to wait, okay? Yamru b'nei Israel el Moshe lemor hen gav'anu avadnu kulanu avadnu. Okay, so again, the children of Israel are complaining. Verse 13. Kol akrev el mishkan Yahweh yamut ha'im tamnu ligvoa. So everyone who comes near the Mishkan is dying. And oops, I didn't press on that. So they're complaining again. They go right back to their complaining, even after all of this. Okay, we have 18. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through it so we could say we finished the parsha. I'm not going to do any commentary. I'm just going to read straight through it. Okay, no commentary. I promise, even if I have a lot to say. Okay, but I do want to finish the parsha, and so that's what we're going to do because I have to end the study. So we're in Numbers 18, verse 1. Vayomer Yahweh el Aharon, Ata uvanecha ubeit avicha itach תישאו את עוון המקדש ואתה בניך איתך תישאו את עוון כהונתכם. Verse 2. ורם את אחיך מטה לוי שבט אביך הקרב איתך וילוו עליך וישרתוך ואתה ובניך איתך לפני אוהל העדות. Verse 3. ושמרו משמרתך ומשמרת כל האוהל אך אל כלי הקודש ואל המזבח לא יקרבו ולא ימותו גם הם גם אתם. ונלוו עליך ושמרו את משמרת אוהל מועד לכל עבודת האוהל וזר לא יקרב עליכם. שמרתם את משמרת הקודש ואת משמרת המזבח וכל ולא יהיה עוד קצף על בני ישראל. ואני הנה לקחתי את אחיכם הלוויים מתוך בני ישראל לכם מתנה נתונים ליהווה לעבוד את עבודת אוהל מועד. ואתה ובניך איתך תשמרו את כהונתכם לכל דבר המזבח מבית לפרוכת ועבדתם עבודת מתנה אתן את כהונתכם והזר הקרב יומת. Okay, I think actually I'm going to stop here. This is going on this is a long chapter and it's quite technical. So I hope everyone continues reading it on their own. It's only a little bit left, but it would take another 5 to 10 minutes, and I really do have to get going. It's kind of getting late, and I've got to eat, and I have things to do. So I think we're going to end the study here. Any final comments? Any final questions before we end it? Anybody want to say anything? No? So if not, I thank you all for joining me. This has been Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights and the World Alliance of Qara'im, wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov, and Bezrat Yahweh. We will see you again next week. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov.